Guys, now that is the server system. You can see it on your screen. Now we've done the first part by installing the server using the ISO image. Remember, this is our main server system, so we used a CD to run the installation. This was an installation done through a CD. Now, if you notice, by default, it takes up the administrator, just like we did in Windows 2008. Is that not correct? Now, the next step we're going to do is to put in our password. So I'm going to put the default password, which is capital letter capital letter P, then A, $ twice, then W0RD, which is this. So I'm going to type it again. $W0RD. I'm going to click on finish. So that is finalizing our installation. And now it's taking us to the desktop where we have to log in. So this is the first exercise we're doing, deploying Windows Server 2012. So we're done with the name. So let's go and insert, Ctrl-Alt-Delete, and type in the password. And it says applying default settings. The same way we had it with 2008 is the same way Server 2012 is also logged in as well. Okay, that's the first task, installing and configuring. That's the first task. It's fine. It says the Windows license is expired. It's fine. We'll keep using it. It doesn't stop up because it's an evaluation copy. So there's something I want to show you. Can we click on the start menu? Go to search, type CMD. Type CMD and run as administrator, which is a command prompt. Then type SLM. slmgr.vbs space /rem. slmgr.vbs space /rem. REARM. Then press enter. Okay, it says command completed. So let's restart the server now. So I'm going to restart the server. I was not supposed to log out. Supposed to restart. So I'm going to log in again. Can I have one class? Can I have one class? One class. No, I'm not going to repeat it. I'm restarting my server. Okay, server is restarting and it's booting. So just leave the computer to boot up. Now the server is ready. So I'm going to log in now. Use the same password using we used in setting it up. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to minimize the dashboard. I'm going to go to the Starts, right-click on the Starts menu. I'm going to go to System. And if you notice, it said the license has expired. Is that not correct? We don't see that license expired anymore, right? It's just said Windows is not what? Activated. Activate Windows. Now we're not having a key to activate Windows, so we're just going to leave it like that. So what I did was to use that command to extend the Windows activation. Are we together? So that we can have more grace period, huh? To be able to use all the features that we need. So that was the command I ran a few minutes ago. Okay, guys. Our computer is currently on the internal network adapter. So the first thing we're going to do is to change the server time. In case you're asked to change the server time, normally if you're using a computer you just bought, should actually have the time up to date. But this is how Server2012 looks like. It comes up with a dashboard. This is like the initial, this is like a server manager. Are you getting me? In Server 2008. So if you notice, we don't have that issue of initial configuration task anymore. We now have what we call the dashboard. The dashboard. Are we following? Okay, if you go to the Start menu, you will see Administrative Tools, PowerShell, Server Manager. Of course, the same Server Manager we had in 2008. Is that not correct? We have this PC, Task Manager, some of the basic things that you do with a server. Because the server is not for playing games, installing programs and applications. It's not an end user type of system. It's more of a system you use when you want to manage other clients' computer. So these are major tools that you probably will be using. It's either using administrative tools. Now, if you check in Server 2008, when we wanted to go to the Windows deployment services, we had to go to the administrative tools, right? By clicking on the Start menu, right? We went to the Start menu and we scrolled down to administrative tools. That was when we went through to what? To the Windows deployment services. But look at it on Server 2012, it gave us the tool right on the startup screen. Are we together? You can add as many tools as well on this screen later on. If you scroll down as well, you also see other apps. You see the other apps, system configuration. Are we together? Paint, step recorders, you know, any other tools that probably, but if you notice, they are not tools that, if you notice the applications there are not things that are user-friendly. Do you notice? They are more of an administrative what? Applications. Is that not correct? You see them, computer management, defragment, event log, iScores initiator, you have system configuration, services. You don't have things like the applications usually have Windows Store and things like that. Is that not correct? Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my desktop. Now, every time you boot up your computer, it comes up with a dashboard. The dashboard is like the center of everything. It's where you carry out all your configuration, where you add multiple servers, where you create server groups, where you add roles and features. You guys remember roles and features, right? Yeah, on the Server 2008, we had the roles and features on the side of the server manager, right? You have to select whichever one you want to go to, roles or features. But on the server system 2012, all you just need to do is to just click on roles and features. But if you notice, the server manager or Server 2012 give us a kind of a step guide to really configure the server. The first point, it says configure what? This server. Can we click on that? Now, it takes us to the same initial configuration task you would have seen if you're working with Server 2008. Is that not correct? Remember, we actually connected 4 network adapters on this Server 2012. Is that not correct? I told you the reason why we did that, right? Because we're going to be doing network teaming. Is that not correct? Okay. If you notice, the first part, it says computer what? Name. Meaning we need to change the server name. So we're going to be calling this server Server 1. Is that not correct? So I'm going to click on the name where you see the name there, I'm going to click on change, and I'm going to type server. I'm going to type CSVR. That's a short for server. SVR1. Have you done that? SVR1. So I'm going to click on OK. And of course, the system is going to prompt us to restart for the changes to take place, right? Because everything has to change, because everything is bearing the computer, so the profile has to change, the system has to change. So we're going to click on OK and close, and we'll restart now. So allow the computer to go to the restart, and we'll come back to the desktop. Is that not correct? That's the first task. Always take note of what I'm doing, because you'll be asked to set up your servers in this manner. The next thing now is to log in. We're going to click on Insert, Ctrl-Alt-Delete again, and we're going to log in with our normal password. Remember, the server is still a local computer system. Is that not correct? It's still a normal local computer system. If you see, even from the login page, you can see that for yourself as well. Okay, that's the server manager, which we now call the dashboard. It's coming up again. Now, in this step, we're going to be changing the date and time. You can actually maximize it, so that you can cover the screen, okay? You can always minimize it. Huh? So, if you notice, on the top, you see that the server loads, right? Who can tell me what is happening there? What is it trying to do? You see, it's trying to load. Do you see something moving on the top? Huh? A loading stream moving from one side to the end. Who can tell me what is happening there? No. What it's doing is doing what? It's refreshing what? The dashboard. Are you getting me? Now, what does refresh mean? Refresh means that every time you load up the server, if there are services that need to start up, that refresh ensures that everything is in order. If there's an error, you'll notice that it brings up, and you can see local server there. It tells you there's a one error there. Are you getting me? Normally, if there's also an error on the server, you see this flag. It gives you a notification. Are we together? You're going to see that as time goes on, as we go on. So that's why every time you boot up the server, allow the refresh to go to be finished. Allow it to finish its processing, then you can proceed. Don't be in a hurry to just click. Always monitor that, because you might just affect something that is trying to run. So when it's done, because what is happening, it does a refresh of the entire server. Make sure that all the services are now running. They are all ready. Then you can proceed with whatever configuration you want to do. So before you do anything, always look at that. Then when you even carry out some tasks, you can come in here and run and force the refresh. Because the changes may not be appearing here. You just want the changes to appear immediately. You can force the refresh as well. Are we together? Yeah. Because there are some things we'll do, it will not reflect the changes immediately. But if we go back and do a refresh, if we come back, you'll see that the changes will take place immediately. Okay. Now the next step, we go back again, configure the server. Now the next step, now if you notice our computer name has changed. Is that not correct? Yeah. Server 1. Now the next step is to change our time zone and our time configuration. You can see the arrow here. You can see the way I put the mouse here. You see the arrow. You can push this down. If you're not seeing that. Hold together. You can push it down. Now I'm going to scroll to this side. I'm actually on the US time. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to click, because the next part is to change your time zone. So I'm going to click on change time zone. I'm going to come to change date and time. And my time is, what's my time now? My time is, what's your time now? 9:25. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put 9:25. And today's date is what? The 1st of July, and it's AM, okay, so I'll click OK. Then I'm going to change my time zone. We are located in Africa. We're located in Windhoek. So I'm going to scroll down to Windhoek. where you have +2, I think, +1, sorry. That's Venture there, huh? Is that not correct?
Yep.
Of course, if you notice, we said automatically adjust the daytime. So even though we didn't change the time before, if we just came to the time zone and we change the time zone, it will also automatically change the time as well. So that's why if I click OK, you'll notice the time has also changed as well. Then you notice it brings it back to PM. So let's go back again, and because we're not connected online, huh? So it's an AM. Yeah, so because we're not actually connected on the internet, huh? So normally, if we're connected on the internet, it will automate the process. Are we together? So that's our time, Ventuk. And that's our time there. 9:26, okay. So our time is configured. Now the next thing is to configure the network. Now if you notice, on the network system, you have 4 network adapters, right? We have Ethernet 1, Ethernet 2, Ethernet 3, and what? And if you notice, it says all network adapters are what? Dynamic. Is that not correct? Class, is that not correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to select the first one, which is Ethernet, which is this one. We're going to select it. And we're going to go to it will take us to the network connections. So we're going to click on Ethernet. And we're going to right click and says rename. And I'm going to call this internal okay, we'll call it main server 1. Call it main server so that even though we made a mistake with the network adapters, we will probably know which network adapters is not connected. Are we together? So I've given it a name server 1, main server 1. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to double click on it, go to properties, I'm going to click on IP version 4, and I'm going to click on properties again. I'm going to go to use the IP address, and I'm going to type 192.168.1.1. We're going to leave the DNS blank, okay? Are we together? We're going to leave the DNS blank because, of course, the server will be running DNS in a few minutes from now. So we're going to close, and that is it. So if I go to the properties, I say status, view details, it gives me the same IP address. So I'm fine with that. Okay. Now, we're going to join the computer to the domain by installing Active Directory domain services because we don't have an Active Directory domain setup. Now, the reason why we're going to be joining the domain is because we don't have an already made domain system. Because I also want through this domain, we're going to be installing a server core as well. Are we together? Before we get to the client's area. So what I'm going to do is simple. I'm going to go to the dashboard again. Now in this case, I'm not configuring the server. I'm done configuring the server, okay? All the settings I want to put in place are already in place. If you scroll down, you also have other informations like all servers, local servers, file and storage services. If you notice, by default, Microsoft actually pull up the file and storage services automatically. Unlike in the previous server, you have to install the role first. Yeah, so because it's automatically available. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add the Active Directory role services for this server 1, because we're going to be installing another server 2. So I'm going to click on Add Roles and Features. I'm going to click on Next. Of course, you can read all the information. Tells you about strong password. Make sure you use static IP address. You can see all that information, Windows update and all of that. I'm going to click Next. Now it's going to ask, is this a role-based or feature-based? Or is this a remote desktop service what? You guys remember VDI? Virtual what? Meaning installing the role service for a virtual desktop infrastructure to create a virtual machine based on what? Virtualization environment. So I will have a thin client that will be connecting to that application through what? The VDI system. But it's a role-based installation, right? on our computer system. So we're not taking a desktop VDI installation. So we're going to click next. If you notice there, it says destination server, server what? 1. But there's something. You notice there, it says, you can see the IP address there. 169. And that's the problem, right? Okay, let's go back. Let's refresh the server. Let's refresh the server. You notice the notification comes up. You see that it's telling you it's refreshing the server, right? So let's leave it for it to run through. Yes.
Basically, after every setting.
Okay, if you notice now the refresh is done. So we'll go back again, add rows and features. Next. Is a row-based and feature-based. Next. Now, okay, it's still showing the same IP address, but if you notice, it's giving us all the IP address of the server, including the one we statically assigned. Are you seeing it? Because we currently have how many network adapters? 4. And the 4 network adapters, the rest of them are statically assigned, and they are trying to communicate to the DHCP server. Are we together? Yes?
Oh, no, I just noticed that the last one is the one that is statically now assigned. The first 3 are still there.
Yes. So what we'll do in this scenario is to create a network team whereby we combine all 4 network adapters to become 1. How do we do that? Network teams is a topic I'm supposed to come back later on, but it's quite of an emergency. So what I'm going to do, since we only have 1 network adapter, so I'm going to disable the rest. So I'm going to go to the network configuration. Sorry. Right click, open network in sharing center, change network adapter. I'm going to disable the rest. And I'm going to leave only main server what? 1. I'm going to disable the rest. Are we together? I'll come back to that later on, okay? So I'm going to leave just 1, huh? Okay. Instead of deleting it. Now if I go back to my server system, add rows and features, sorry, add rows and features. If I click on next, next again, okay, I have to refresh, just a minute. I have to refresh. Okay, this is done. Let's see. So let's click on add rows and features, next, and I have my 192. You seen it? So it's always good to refresh your server, okay? So that you don't make mistakes. So it's now, if I had 5 servers already in my computer, which I'm going to teach you guys later on, because we'll be doing remote installation of server for server core. Now, if you notice here, I only have server 1. If I have 2 servers already in my system, they will all appear here as well. Then I can select which server I want to install. I can actually click on them from the list here. So I might be in server 1, but I'm actually installing a row in server 3. Are we together? We'll come to that later on. So we're just working with server 1 for now. We click on next. We'll select Active Directory Domain Services, which is a row. You see the same issues we had with server 2012. It pops up the features that are required. But if you notice, the features in 2012 is more different from 2008. In 2012, it says these are things that are going to install. The remote server administrative tools will be installed because you're installing Active Directory. It's going to install Active Directory Domain Services and Light Directory Services. It's going to also install the module for Active Directory PowerShell. Are we together? It's also going to install what they call the Active Directory Administrative what? Center. It's also going to install the snapping and command line tools for Active Directory Domain Services. These are the things that are going to be installed to manage Active Directory. So these are features. So I'm going to click on Add Features. It's fine. I'm going to click on Next. Of course, click on Next again. Next. Now, did you notice there's always a checkbox at the end whenever you want to install. It usually say restart the destination server automatically if what? Required. Now, one of the steps we're going to be doing is to install a role in server core. And you'll notice while we're installing that role probably will need a restart. So instead of me logging into the server to restart it, I can check this box so that if the server needs to be restarted, if it's a remote destination server, it will automatically restart. Are we together? I'm just saying this because I'm going to come back there again. So I'm going to click yes, allow to restart. I'm going to click on install, and that is it. We'll leave it for it to go through the installation. Okay, guys, that's the completion. It's done. The Active Directory is finished. Now, if you guys noticed, now listen, if you noticed, you still have the same settings here, the export settings. You see there it says use the settings for PowerShell. Do you see the settings there? So if I click export settings, it will automatically export it in an XML file format. You guys remember that the answer file always stores its configuration on the XML. So if you notice there, if I just move on my mouse over export, you can see where it says use it in PowerShell to install a feature on a row. You can see the extension there. So if I click export settings, it will export this configuration I've just selected now, and I can take it to a server core environment that run the scripts. Are we together? The same setting we had in 2008 R2. Now I'm going to click close. Well, there's something. We have an issue. Now, whenever we have this yellow icon, there's always an issue. Is that not correct? It's a signal. It's an alert signal. Now let's click on that. Let's see what it says. It says feature installation. It says configuration what? Installation succeeded on server 1. Now, did you notice on the top it says post what? Configuration, meaning we need to promote this server to be what? A domain what? Controller. Like I've told you, the server always tells you what to what? Do. So let's do that. Click on that, promote the server. The wizard comes up. Now, if you notice it's scanning and it's ready. Now it's going to ask us, you guys remember when we have the issue of domain controllers, we have forest and existing forest. Now this is our first server system, is that not correct? Now if you notice it says add this domain controller to an existing domain. That's not the case here, right? The second one says add this domain to an existing what? That is not the case here. The case is what? New forest. So we're going to type in new forest and we're going to call this what? PCE. Dot what? The reason why I'm doing .local, I would have used .com or any root domain, but I don't want us to have issues with computers that are connected to the internet when we're trying to connect to the network. Because I would have used .com, .net, .org, .na. It was gonna still work because we're within the local network. So anybody can still use any of those domains. The reason why I'm using .local because we're working within a local server. Our practicals is going to be based on the local internet. We're not going to use the internet anytime. Except maybe when we do Windows update services, I might show you some things with internet configuration. But since we don't have internet access, that's why we're using what? .local. So I'm going to click on next. It's going to browse through. And that is it. You guys still remember the functional levels? Yeah. Do you still remember the functional levels? Though I think on my lectures, I think I've not talked about this topic, but I'll talk about this topic later on. But it's good, like I'm explaining that, so that when I get to that topic, you'll be able to understand what functional levels are all about. Now, remember, by default, it's giving us what? The default, which is 2012 R2. Now, if I come to the, remember we have two forest functional level. We have the forest and what? The domain. Remember I told you the forest is where you have geographical areas or other domain systems, okay, that resides on the forest. They are not local domain systems. They are servers that connect through the forest to access resources on your local domain. Now, in this scenario, you probably want to raise the forest functional level to 2008. That's the minimum for 2012. But for, you see, for 2008, the minimum was what? 2000. But for 2012, the minimum is 2008. Because any computer wants to run 2012 should actually have a minimum server for 2008. So if I had a 2008 R2, which we all had, I can now minimize it down to 2008 R2. Are we together? But since our system or our practicals we're going to be using is 2012 throughout, we're going to leave it on what? 2012 R2. But if I have to install server 2012, not the R2, I will actually, or I currently have in a branch office already 2012 R2, but they are accessing the server through the forest. Then I will click on. So my first level is 2012. on the domain level is what? 2012 R2, which now work with Windows 8.1. But the users who are in my branch office, they are still running 2012, which is fine. So they can still be able to get into my domain, have access to resources. But in this case, we're just going to select the default, okay? Did you guys notice the same issues we had? Domain name systems, checked. Global catalog. We also have the read-only domain controller features again. It's unchecked because of what? This is our first what? Forest. Or rather, your first domain in a forest. Now, you remember the password, right? For what? Disaster recovery, right? If you want to do directory service recovery. So, let's put the password again. The normal password you use in logging in. Capital letter PA, $WO0ROD. When that is done, we click on Next. Of course, it brings up the same screen you had on 2008. There's no delegation for this particular domain, so it's fine. We're going to create a delegation for it, so click Next. Of course, it's going to scan. You guys remember the NetBIOS name? Remember the NetBIOS name is the single label name. Is that not correct? So the server is trying to assign a name now for the NetBIOS, which is PCE. Because PCE.local is a what? A fully qualified what? Domain name. While PCE is what? A NetBIOS what? Name. Take note of that. You guys remember the path? You guys remember the path where you store your Active Directory, the database, the same location, the NTDS and the sysvol, right? So we'll go click Next. And it's just going to tell you to just review if everything was okay. Okay. What about if I want to automate this installation using PowerShell? I can actually come here and say View Scripts. So all I need to do, you guys remember we installed, you guys remember we installed the PowerShell mode for Active Directory. Do you guys remember that? When we installed the features. Okay, let's go back to Tools. Let's go to Tools. Now, did you see Active Directory module for PowerShell? Click on it. Okay. Now, if you come back to the settings, where we click on View Script, it says we can import this by, you see what we can do? All we need to do is just to copy this, we put it in, press Enter, it automates the process.
Now PowerShell is nice.
Says now PowerShell is nice.
Yeah.
Are we together? You view the script. So you want to actually put this script in a server core. You can copy it, save it into a USB device, go to the PowerShell, go to where the USB URL is, put the URL, run the script, and it will automatically run this application. It will run exactly this. So I can actually go in here and change it. Okay, that server is not PCE. That server is actually RIT. Are we together? You can change anything. You see the domain mode. Remember when we changed the forest level, the forest functional level? You can come here and say 2008 or 2012 or 2008 R2. You can do all those changes. You can change the location path as well. Then you run the script. I'm just going to close that. I'm not going to save it. I just wanted to show you how that is. I'll click Next. You guys remember prerequisites. Prerequisite is what is required before the domain can actually be installed. So the server checks your entire server environment to be sure that you meet the prerequisites before this role is installed. If there is an issue with one of the prerequisites, it gives you an error. But unfortunately, it says all prerequisites checked passed what? Successfully, meaning your server is in right order. So I'm going to click on Install. And we'll just wait for it to install, and we'll have our domain